Welcome to Orbitals, an astrology podcast. I'm your host, William Holloway, and today's show is all about the eighth house. With me to discuss and dissect is my special guest astrologer, Kim LaRue. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really great to be here and connect with you after knowing you a bit on Instagram, actually, for maybe a couple of years. I think we've been
I think
following each
so.
other. And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm excited. When I was thinking about doing this episode, you were the first person that popped up when I thought about the eighth house. And the reason is because I find that you have a calmness about you when you speak that is so inviting. And to me, that made the most sense for a subject that can be as dark as the eighth house.
Ah, you were probably picking up that I'm quite intimate with the eighth house, having a moon Chiron there.
I know, I didn't know that. So you have a prominent eighth house. I too have a prominent eighth house. My Neptune is in the eighth house, square my sun. So, and which is
Which house
conjunct.
is your sun? What's your sun sign again?
So my sun is in Virgo
Uh,
in the fifth house, conjunct Jupiter. It's not, Jupiter is not under the beams. It's in the heart of the sun because it's within a degree. So I do think that that kind of makes my eighth house pretty loud, considering that my eighth house is Sagittarius, ruled by that Jupiter, and then making that square. So I've had some, and we'll get into when we start talking about our personal experiences with the eighth house, but I've had, I would say, both extremes of the eighth house, the really, really as dark as you can get versions of the eighth house, as well as the very positive, illuminating, exciting parts of the eighth house. So.
hmm Wow. Yeah, well, then you really have had the extremes, and now you're probably able to balance it all out, right?
I'd like to think, but we'll see. So yeah, let's get into it. So the eighth house, there are three fundamental components that come together to create an astrological chart. You have your planet, signs, and houses. Well, I'm not going to break all of that down today. In a nutshell, planets show what is happening, the signs show how it's happening, and the houses show us where it's happening. And there are 12 houses. But today we are only going to talk about the one house, the mysterious, often misunderstood, and feared eighth house, known as the idle place. And part of the reason it is known as the idle place is that it receives no light or life force from the ascendant by traditional aspect. Firmicus called the eighth house the gate of hell. And I would say the most common take on the eighth house is death and all things related to it.
You know what I really love? I love like comparing the access between the second and the eighth, because that gives a feel like of the duality
Hmm.
of the evolution that we are going through through the houses. I think the houses are like an evolution. And so like, if the second house is like basically our resources and our fundamental resources that we need, food and money and basic needs. The eighth house is often considered other people's resources. And what my teacher Adam Allenboss says that I really like is when he says that it's like the blood bank. The eighth house is the blood bank. It's a shared resources house, because the second house is your house, like your resources, I mean. And the eighth house is like, other people's, like it's a collective of a lot of different things. It's kind of a junk drawer, the eighth
It is.
house. There's a lot of different things going on there. And I know they say that it's like the death house, but really the death house is the seventh house, which makes sense because when you get married, then you die. No, you do die. You actually
Yeah.
die to the when at the descendant. But the eighth house is from the seventh, and then that leads to death and taxes and sex and all those other kinds of things that you deal with after you get married or make a contract with someone, because the seventh house isn't just marriage contracts, it's contracts of of all kinds of relationships, our clients and such like that. So the eighth house, then you really get to you have to share the resources with the individuals that you're having contracts with. So
Yeah.
yeah, the eighth house is quite mysterious. And also in medical astrology, as I'm a practitioner of medical astrology, uh, is that it can't be seen by the ascendant. So it's a danger. It's kind of like a spot that can be unseen where illness can happen. I mean, yeah, classically the sixth, the eighth, and the 12th are difficult to see from the ascendant. So, yeah, the eighth house is a very interesting place where occult matters are.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting right now that we're having this I don't did you hear much about in Egypt now they've discovered a whole underground system.
I saw a headline yesterday, but I didn't click on it. So I don't really know anything about that. No.
It's like super news right now that like through some kind of electrical magnetic machine, somebody discovered something under deep underground, a whole nother like city that hasn't, I'm getting goosebumps, that
Wow.
hasn't been discovered. And you can look it up and yeah, like they've got these things with spirals, I guess, and like just so eighth house is a lot to do with occult matters, things you can't see, or hidden matters, or magic, for good and for bad. I have also discovered that the eighth house is related to other people's resources, given like your parents, your family, your lineage, your ancestors.
Like inheritances and
Yeah, not only inheritances money, but inheritances for what you inherit, like as far as karma or,
hmm
you know, past life information that needs to be, I guess, brought up or purified or worked with. So yeah, and money inheritances also. And with my moon Pisces, I've had those things happen, many of those kinds of things. When I was a small child, I was always interested in Egypt. My grandfather had a big table book with the seven wonders of the world, and I was just like, wow, this is amazing, like occult stuff. And I've had inheritance before, and I deal a lot with ancestral purification in my life, and my deep Buddhist background was very occult in doing like ancient practices and stuff like that, like secret Vajrayana tantric practices. I have a lot to say about the eighth house.
Me too. I love that. And with you have your moon in the eighth. Do you find, because I've found this with clients that have their moon in the eighth, that they have, whether it's super intuition or psychic abilities or a knowing, and it tends to be inherited from the mother's side.
Actually, my mother had a mental illness.
Oh,
She's
that's the
passed
other
now.
side. Okay.
Yeah, so like that's also could be a signification of eighth house is like mental illness. And my mother had like, I guess it was schizophrenia or whatever, but in my life in the eighth house, how it's really played out is that I've I do healing work. I do craniosacral therapy. I have a moon in Pisces conjunct Chiron. So I work with the fluid of the body, the deep cerebral spinal hidden parts of the body. It's like ancient way of really working osteopathically or myofascially. I worked in end of life and drug rehabs and mental health things for most of my life. Since I was 15, I worked in hospitals.
Wow.
So um, that's how it's played out. And my mom, I ended up helping her with her end of life, even though we were estranged. Eighth house, again, kind of like this,
hmm
not can't see. I wasn't able to be with my mom. We didn't see each other in that way.
Yeah, I
I
was
did
gonna.
end up helping her with her end of life, and
Mm,
that was very magical and very occult like too. I believe actually, people who do have mental illness, like in shamanic cultures and whatnot, those people are seers. They like things that my mom would say, even though people thought it was crazy, was actually quite true. Now
yeah.
when I think about it. Yeah, what
It's
she
true.
said when I was when I, and now this is very freaky. We're gonna go down this like
All
little
right,
rabbit hole here.
let's go.
My mom, with her mental illness, thought that she was listening to the radio newscaster, and she thought that he was sharing our life business on his newscast. That's actually what happens these days now with social media.
Yeah, that's true.
One day that came to me, I was like, wow, that was almost prophetic in a way, you know? So I think people are sensitive in the eighth
Yes.
house.
I remember when I, started getting into astrology, I'm like, how it's like on one hand it's death, but then it's also the shared resources. And like you were saying, in the seventh house you get married. The eighth house is like everything after the honeymoon, right? Like you're
Mhm.
trying to,
Trying to distribute the finances, the money, the resources. It's got to
right.
be distributed somehow. And you always have to be working that out when you're in relationship with another being, you know, like it's
Mhm.
it's it's that polarity of like these are mine and these are yours and this is ours. And how are we going to distribute this fairly?
Right.
As fair as possible. It's kind of karmic, actually, to be honest. I
It
get this
is.
feeling that it's karmic, because it carries so much value.
Yeah. There's existential quality to it too, because you're also trying to work out a power dynamic. That's the other thing about the eighth house. You can kind of think of this shared resources. There's this power dynamic around it, right? Because when you're trying to unite, there's a lot of ugly existential parts of getting to that if you get to it, right? Um,
Yeah.
and because relationships can be catalysts for transformation.
Yep.
Um, and if you have a successful one, usually it means that you've done some reflection and you've surrendered a bit because there's surrender to, when you're in a relationship, it's not you have them, and then the third thing, which is the relationship, right?
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then,
absolutely.
yeah, and then when that doesn't work out, that's another part of the eighth house, right? Because I've seen a lot of people break up during eighth house perfection years.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's easy when you're doing shared resources for people to have disagreements. That's a big topic of, like what your end values that change, especially like we're thinking about right now, we have Mercury and Venus in retrograde. So we're rethinking our values right now. We're rethinking like what's important and starting over with this, Aries pile up that we've got going on with yeah, anytime there's these aspects start, triggering those kinds of things, it starts to bring us to another way of wanting to uh, perceive what's important, how to evolve, how to take care of ourselves. And I read for a girl. I do in my little hippie town here in Spain. We have a kind of a mercado, and I read for people locally, little mini astrology readings. And one woman, yeah, it was so clear that she was going to be getting a divorce, all the signs, because then the money, the eighth house was pinging, like you're going to be rethinking your eighth house and how you're distributing your resources and what's important to you. So yeah, it's a house of endings. Yeah.
Yeah. Something I was going to talk about, the ways in which we can experience the eighth house. And there's, if you have a bunch of planets in the eighth house, that's one thing, or like prominent things, like we have prominent things in the eighth house, connected to
Mhm.
the eighth house. Or the ruler of your eighth house is really prominent, or something's transiting the eighth house. Or if you're having an eighth house profected year, which for those who don't know what a profected year is, it's the concept, it's a timing technique, the idea that every year of your life a different house is highlighted and the themes of that year are really loud, and it's almost like that house is getting renovated. Uh,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This year I'm in my Mercury year.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, Mercury year. I'm in my second house.
Okay.
Um, so
I'm in the
I'm in the
ninth house.
opposite of the eighth. You're in the ninth.
Hmm.
Okay. And
Saturn.
what is the rule? Okay, the ruler of the of your house in the ninth house is Saturn.
Yeah.
Wow. Aquarius Saturn or Capricorn
Capricorn.
Saturn. Okay,
Capricorn.
Capricorn Saturn.
Yeah.
So foundations and structures.
Yeah. But you have to go through the eighth house here before you go through your ninth house here, which very much informs the ninth, right? When you have that
Yeah.
eighth house.
And how was your eighth house year, may I ask?
It was good. I mean, so yeah, looking at the years you have your eighth house perfected year, it's at age 7, 19, 31, 43, 55, 67, and then it goes on. It was my 43rd year, and it was not bad. It was definitely better than last eighth house perfected year. I mean, that's the other thing, with all of us astrology. Most of the time, things get easier and better as time goes on, right? So like the eighth house can be a difficult year maybe when you're younger, but hopefully as you get older, they're much more enlightening and less um, difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but because so the last eighth house year I had a 31 had a relationship end at the beginning of it, and I was did not handle it well because it happened right at the same time that my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And
Oh,
she got very sick, and for that whole year it wasn't looking good, you know what I mean? And
hmm.
there was a period of time where we really, really were not sure if she was going to come through. And she ultimately did, and she's still with us, and she's doing great. She's been cancer free for a long time.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, totally. But what's interesting is that when I had my next eighth house year, this last year, there was a moment where there was almost a cancer scare again. So like the theme came up again, and I was like, you
Uh-huh.
gotta be kidding me, really?
Yeah.
But then went to the doctor, looked at everything. Oh, no, you're fine. But that theme came back a little bit. It was like harkening back a little bit. But
It
this
was
time,
rhyming. What do they say? It's
oh,
something
history
along
doesn't
the lines of
repeat, but
it's
it
like,
but it rhymes. Yeah.
yes, exactly.
Something I've noticed when people have the sun in the eighth, um, is they could feel not seen by others, or and
Hmm.
they can be like the black sheep of the family. The family doesn't understand them. And also, I feel like I've seen a lot of times with people with their sun in the eighth, especially when they're younger, they might be like seeking validation through others. Like it's like they can't always trust. It's like in order to feed their ego, they need others to tell them that, which, is pretty normal for a lot of people. But
Yeah.
I've noticed it
Well, yeah, the eighth
very
house people can be very insecure and they can have anxiety. I mean,
right.
that can be definitely, and if the sun is there, maybe that person's not clear about their path. They're not clear about their so-called how they see themselves. But they might be very distracted and be able to see like they're picking up on like their ancestors stuff, like picking up their family dynamics and really being they could be a game changer. That's why they could be the so-called black sheep of the family, to change, either one, the moon or the sun, the luminaries are quite
Yeah,
powerful
they're
in that
powerful.
area. And that's what I feel like I'm the person, and especially through my Tibetan Buddhist practices of purification. I feel like I want to purify my ancestors' stuff and be responsible for it because maybe my other family members aren't that's not their role. It's not their role. We're all here for a reason. We all have very specific gifts to offer, and I feel that's a gift to offer when you can see ancestral stuff. So yeah, sun and moon and in the eighth for sure.
The people that I've found that have been successful and lean towards the light, I should say, with having these eighth house placements are artists, deeply spiritual people. because you look at people
Yeah.
who aren't those things. And of course, looking at the condition of the house of the eighth house ruler too, because there's a lot of like people with some dark stuff that have very prominent eighth house placements, right? Like again, you see these kind of extremes of like, I mean, Hitler had very prominent eighth house planets.
Hmm.
His son, Mars and Venus in Aries in the eighth house.
Hmm.
Although he was an artist and he was okay, and he probably should have stuck with that. But
Yeah, you know that Charlie Chaplin and Hitler have similar charts.
they do,
So
yes.
yeah, it kind of shows this like little bit fate and free will thing, but it's still very confusing to me. I don't know how that could
I
even
know.
be. It's so paradoxical.
It's wild. I know, and especially because like Charlie Chaplin played Hitler in a movie.
Right.
Yeah. Venus in the eighth is another interesting thing. I've seen people, could be really into esoteric things, or they should be anyway. Because I've also seen people with Venus in the eighth that may have some hidden habits. They may be prone to abusive relationships, at least at some point in their life. Again, it's all dependent on, other aspects and how well these things are showing up. But what do you think
Yeah.
about Venus in the eighth?
That's actually Rihanna has Venus in the eighth house. Rihanna.
Oh,
And Robert Downey Jr. has Sun and Venus in the eighth house. Yeah.
one
Oh,
had a very public addiction, and the other had a very public abusive relationship.
correct. Right
Yeah.
on. Yeah, that's crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Elon Musk has Pluto in the eighth house.
Oh, really?
Obviously, we know that Pluto is about power.
Right.
Um, it's a very powerful, and so it has a lot to do with like he's the shared resources, right? All
Mm-hmm.
that shared resource, he shared probably a lot of resources with who, and other people shared resources for him to start up his different things. So that's an interesting person.
Yeah. Oh, that is interesting.
Outer planet, eighth house. Yeah.
Uh-huh. You know who else? Steve Jobs had his moon and Mars in Aries in the eighth. Um,
Oh wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Kanye West has his moon in the eighth. And, with all that stuff going on in Pisces, his eighth house has been getting hit hard. But, like I was saying before, a big part of it is like, what's the condition of the ruling planet of the eighth, too? That tells us
Hmm.
something. Because with
Hmm.
Kanye West, his Jupiter is under the beams in Gemini. So it's like that Jupiter is non-functioning. And even if it is functioning in
Hmm.
Gemini, that's not a great place for Jupiter to be, right?
Yeah, that feels very fallen.
Very fallen. And then, the USA Sibley chart has the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter in Cancer uh, in the eighth.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
the USA is
All
a little
that,
bit of a death cult, so that makes sense.
yeah, all those shared resources, so-called resources, whatever.
Shared,
Making
stolen, whatever.
secret money in the basement.
Right.
Also the eighth house is in astrology, which is interesting in medical astrology. In medical astrology, according to the, astrology being. So, it starts with the head is Aries and we can carry on, but the eighth house is Scorpio. So,
Hmm.
that's how the eighth house does get kind of caught up with death and sexuality, the sexual organs, the genitals, these kinds of things are related to eighth house matters of your health and medical astrology. And it's interesting because didn't you say your moon is Scorpio? So yeah, in a way we're talking about eighth house
Yeah,
stuff with you.
totally. So Pluto went into my eighth house of Sagittarius in 1995. And that's when I came out of the closet. So I was 14, 15 when I came out. And
How did that feel? Can I ask you, like,
yeah,
like, how did Pluto coming into your eighth house, like, did it feel like pressure? Like you had pressure to come out of the closet?
a little bit because I remember at the time, yeah, I was kind of forced now that I think about it because I hadn't even come out and I just gotten into high school and I was became friends with a lot of the queer people that were a little bit older than me. They were immediately
Mm.
trying to hook me up with people like, oh, I know this guy that you should. And I'm like, I haven't even come out yet. Like, I don't need a boyfriend just yet. Let me come out. And I remember like I came out to the goth girl when we were smoking cigarettes during like the drama production, like outside and like behind the school. And I told her she was the first person I ever came out to, and then she told everybody. And I was upset at first, and I was like, no, because I was going to tell everybody anyway. So it was kind of like I was forced into it, but I didn't. But I also knew that like I just needed it. It was,
It's kind of like bursting open, it feels like,
yeah,
because you have Sag and so Jupiter is the ruler of that. So the pressure was pushing on the Jupiter and the expansion. Yeah.
yeah. And it was like I need to live my truth. Um,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Beliefs might have to be in
yeah.
alignment.
Yeah, and during that whole time, it was I had very, very eighth house plutonic experiences, both extremes. So I developed all my deepest friendships during that time. Some people that I'm still very, very close with during that whole transit. But as Pluto got closer and closer to my Neptune, which is at 19 degrees Sagittarius, and so that would have been around 2003 when Pluto hit my Neptune. I was living in Philadelphia, and my house fell over, like
Oh my
completely
God.
collapsed. Yeah. So I was
How
in
did
the
it
house.
follow? Why?
It was during one of the hurricanes. So it was late 2003. I don't remember which hurricane that was. So it was just very windy. And I was living in West Philadelphia in a duplex, a pretty, old house. And there was an abandoned apartment building right next to my house.
Uh-huh.
And I just remember I was like making a mix CD in my room. And then the house shook. I jumped up, and then a window that I was had been sitting next to burst in, and there was just like debris and bricks everywhere. And I'm like, oh my God. So I run outside, and I'm just like in this dust cloud, and this tall apartment building, just fell over on my
Oh
house.
my God, that's incredible.
Yeah, destroyed. I lost so much.
Pluto Neptune, you said.
Yep,
Pluto Neptune.
Pluto,
Yeah, totally
Neptune.
just dissolve your place.
Yep. I lost so many things. I had to give up because it was like we didn't have renter's insurance. The our landlord he had just started renting he didn't know how to handle any of it. He had nothing to offer us. I just remember we had to like get everything out of the house as soon as we could because it was going to get looted. And I got
Yeah.
most of my stuff out, but I had to let go of a lot of stuff because I didn't know where to put it. So anyway, and then I ended up moving back.
Yeah, that's your stuff, the eighth house, your resources, other people's resources,
Yep.
distributing the resources,
Yeah.
losing resources.
You know, it was also around this time that I got really into drugs. And by the end of 2005, Pluto had moved along through my eighth house, stationed, retrograded back, and stationed again on my Neptune in the eighth house square, my sun. And in that span of time, I had become a full-blown drug addict. Everything came crashing down like a tower card. Crashed my car, spent the night in jail, lost my job, lost my boyfriend. It was bad. It was like the worst that, you could possibly imagine, and without being dead. But I went to rehab. It was a process. I got through it. And what's funny is that as soon as Pluto left my eighth house and went into my ninth, I started exercising. I started having aspirations. I ended up going back to school and, grew up, became an adult. And so, yeah.
So is that fate or free will? That's the
I
thing
think
that
it's a
I was,
combo of both. I don't know. I think about that all the time, though.
it's like that. It's because it's like a drastic change. It's like after you got out of the eighth house, then we go into the ninth house. And
Right.
the ninth house of like spirituality, the house of God, goddess, the house of guru, the house of beliefs and balance and judgment and belief. It's travel, long distance travel. So it's a big change from the eighth house. It's a big change.
Big
So
change. Yeah.
yeah. You know what's funny is I mean, well, I want to first of all say that I'm really glad that you made it to the ninth house
Thank you.
with Pluto, that you got your power back. Yeah, it can be pretty intense in there when you're having some transiting planets. The Saturn sitting on my moon it was pretty intense for me, but it was good. I used it constructively to, like here is like my neighbors and people, easy to be distracted and uh I just realized like one day as Saturn got closer and closer to my moon in the eighth in Pisces that I didn't want anybody around that like nobody could use my resources, that I needed to just keep my resources to myself and to put my nose down and focus inwardly on my body and my health and my well-being. I didn't let anybody get in my field. I really just like I felt like a little seed, under the earth, like protecting my domain. Yeah, it's important to take care of our resources. But it was kind of dark, I definitely felt it was dark. Somebody died in my family around as Saturn was coming closer to the moon there in my eighth house. That's when I made a decision to make distance with the family. And then I was told this person passed, and then I didn't respond back because my health was so important to me, like my mental, physical, emotional health. Saturn was protecting that boundary for me. And I'm really glad. I mean, it's really sad. It's a lose situation. I lose connection with my family, but I feel like I have a better connection with my family that way and with myself. Boundaries, making boundaries with my resources has been a really big thing with the moon Saturn. Um,
That's
and now
good.
I'm on the other side of it and it feels really good. Yeah.
Yay. Yeah, that's the thing. I know we're talking about a lot of dark subject matter, but I mean, that's life, right? Like we learn and grow when we go through these things and we come out the other side and we have a new appreciation for life.
The astrology helps so much because it's like
Yeah.
you know how long it's going to last up in an approximation. You can say, okay, well, I can feel the moon Saturn approaching and getting heavier and the walls getting bigger around me and then you're having the experience of it, perfecting and then it starts to fade and you can I love that when I'm reading for other people because a lot of times people are coming with they already have their intuition. Many people I see have good intuition. It's just that they have fear and doubt, and that's what astrology can be so helpful for people is to, especially if you have a lot of eighth house stuff, you can have a lot of fear and doubt. I wonder how many people that have heavy eighth house stuff go for astrology because
Yeah.
astrology is also eighth house signification, but
Mhm.
it's really super helpful if you have a guide and a map and then you can say okay, yeah, it's only going to last like a few months or something like that and then it's going to start to change.
It's so true. I mean, yeah, when I look at my relationship with my eighth house now and how it was before, when I talk about drug addiction and all this stuff, now my relationship with it is astrology. I mean, that's what I put all my energy into. I get the same high in a completely different, healthy way, because what I was doing is I was looking for God. That's what, especially like things like heroin, I mean, that takes you to another world. People that get into stuff that dark are really looking for a spiritual awakening, and they don't know any other way to do it.
Right, right.
Um,
I used drugs when I was younger. I
yeah,
I definitely experimented, with drugs, and um, I have that Pisces moon, so like I love me some weed, It's,
Right?
yeah, I'm lucky I never got really any addiction to anything, but I did have my experiences, and now as I'm older, I don't feel like I don't need any, I'm not called to ayahuasca or DMT or any sort of, I feel like my life already feels that way. And because I went so deep into Buddhism and meditation, that was like, I really think it's great. This is where we do have the free will, is if we can at least start to look at like the higher expression of the planet, because if we don't express the planet, we become diseased, we become ill, mentally, physically, emotionally. So holistically, the planets want us to express them, but what is the highest octave that we can express that planet, and yeah, we can observe the lower qualities of a planet and its shadow sides, playing with both, spectrums of it. But yeah, we won't be well if we don't acknowledge the planet, which brings me, I'm so excited. Soon I'm going to be doing an astrodrama program to help
Okay.
people to express their through somatically, like their sun, moon, and ascendant. So I'm going to do a little workshop over here.
Oh, that's
With
great.
my
Well,
friend who runs a little theater group. Yeah.
let me give you the floor to give a proper introduction. Do we feel like we've covered everything with the, I feel like we've came to a really good place with the eighth
Yeah, I
house.
think we
Okay.
covered this sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
That's right.
Well, I'm a healing artist, basically. So I've been practicing many different modalities for healing, primarily body work, somatic work, mindfulness training, tantric work, end of life work. So now at this time after my Saturn return, I'm pulling it all together and using medical astrology and herbs. I did study herbalism 30 years ago on my first Saturn return. So I'm just helping people in a holistic way by reading, astrology charts in a medical way, as well as doing craniosacral therapy, just helping people to understand themselves, to know themselves. I'm specifically very interested in like the Hellenistic ways of healing right now. So one day I hope to create a retreat in Greece. I've been to Greece and I went to Asclepius's cave and in Penopolis, and studied Chiron things, and so those are interesting things. And just locally here in my small town, I'm doing healing sessions for people. I look at their chart and then we discuss where they want to take it with craniosacral or massage or herbs or flower essences or all different kinds of things like that. So I'm just flowing over here.
I love that. Could you talk
And the
just a
astral
little,
trauma.
yeah,
Yeah.
about the Astrologer? I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So I was doing a little, I was doing small groups here in my home every Friday called Let's Talk Astrology. And that's just kind of how I started to get people to understand the planets, was by playing them out. I would read the significations and then we would embody them. Somebody would be the moon and someone would be Saturn. And it was quite fun, actually. So,
I
and then
love
I
that.
thought of the incredible healing advantage that has. And then one of my clients is very much into theater and I suggested it, and Chris Brennan came out just like, that's what stimulated it. Was like I've been wanting to do it, and then I saw that he had a whole thing on experiential astrology. So that was my like, okay, now you really just come on, now you do this thing. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. It reminds me of like kind of like family systems, or the work that I do with craniosacral, sometimes in a somatic emotional release session with somebody, like let's say I can feel in their body that there's some attention pattern, and then I can start to feel the rhythm is changing and that they're kind of scratching the surface of something. And so it comes out that way too, like in a Hakomi way, where I'm inviting them to what is the shape of it, what's the color, and then it becomes an entity. It has a sound, it has a name. What is it, what would it like to be called? And then just having different parts of the body or tension patterns or parts of our psyche expressing what they need to express to each other. And I'm more just like the person holding, the mediator, like asking the questions because it comes from internally. It's not, that's when the magic happens if we understand the significations and the archetype. But then it just starts playing out on its own because the magic starts, you open the stage for it, the field, you're in the resonance of it. So I think that's really, really fascinating to put the science and the expression of the planets.
Yeah, that is so cool. Well, I can't wait to hear more when that gets going. I want to hear all about it. Maybe do an episode on that. That would be fun.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be really great.
All right, are you ready to play the Wheel of Fate?
Okay, Wheel of Fate. Let's spin the wheel.
It's in the wheel.
It's okay, Mercury. You can do it.
I
You
know.
can do it.
You can do it. You can do it.
This is, see, now we're doing astrodrama.
Now we're doing
Let's,
Astrodrome. Yeah.
I'm going to talk to Mercury. Hi, Mercury. I know you're retro, but can you just come a little bit more forward for us right now? Or can we bend towards Mercury? Maybe that's really the way it should be, right? It's like
Oh,
we're
good
going to,
idea.
we have to be spacious for Mercury to do Mercury things. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah. I know. This was
Seen this?
with Dorothy.
Dorothy's in the middle.
Yeah.
What Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz?
Yeah. I know. I originally this was going to be like a video podcast only because so people could see this part of it. And I was like, you know what? The video one day maybe, but it just getting the video and audio, I don't want to deal with the visual side of it. So people will just have to imagine here's a wheel with Dorothy's face in the middle.
It's funny, my puppy that I have, she's 6 months, but she looks like Toto.
Oh, cute. All right, so we're gonna spin the wheel. Here we go. We're gonna play the Wheel of Fate. We're gonna spin the wheel. It's gonna give us a random planet, and then I'll spin another wheel that'll give us a random sign, and we are just going to take it from there. Here we go. Oh, oh,
Oh, Mercury.
Mercury. All
Oh,
right.
I love the confetti.
In the confetti, I know. Mercury in.
Spin it, baby.
Oh. Oh,
Ooh,
oh. Wait,
ooh,
which is it?
it's hard to say. Mercury, Gemini, or Cancer.
Is it Mercury in Gemini or is it Mercury in Cancer?
It's on the cusp.
It's right on the cusp.
What should we do?
What should we do?
Well, maybe it's the 29th degree of Cancer or the first 0 degree of, I mean, maybe it's the 29th of Gemini and the 0 degree of Cancer.
I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say it's Gemini. It feels Gemini to me,
It feels Gemini to me too.
you know?
Yeah, let's do Mercury and Gemini. That's powerful.
Wow. Okay. Well, first of all, that is Mercury rules Gemini. So that's a place that Mercury really likes to be. I just think of like someone with a million questions who likes to read a lot, is
They're
kind
wearing
of,
glasses.
yeah, yeah.
They're wearing, they're wearing square glasses and their head down is reading a lot. They're super curious and they're bouncing all over the place with these questions. They could be kind of like a squirrel or a chipmunk with information.
Yes, like
Maybe
a
they have
big,
a little bit of anxiety.
oh yeah, definitely maybe a fast talker. Maybe they jump from subject to subject.
Tricky. They could be tricky because Mercury is Hermes, so they could be
Yeah.
a little bit, maybe they could go between, worlds.
They could also be, maybe a little bit hung up on logic.
Yeah, they probably just want to research everything and have facts, some sort of facts. Maybe they could be dabbling in lots of different things, but a master of
Master
none.
of none. That was the thing. I was trying to think of that and I couldn't think of what it was. Jack of all trades, master of
Yeah. Yeah, it's a jack of all trades, master of none. And if it was a late Gemini, like maybe this Wheel of Fortune is saying that that person would, you know, have a lot of information. They would be very wise, maybe. Yeah, that actually I have a Mercury in Sag. So
none.
yeah, I like a lot of information. I will do a lot of research on things.
Mm.
I studied nursing and anything with the body, all of that is very very mercurial part of me that I really want to know all the secrets to the body and all the information.
I love that. Any
Yeah, do you
last
know anybody who has Mercury in Gemini?
So Audrey Hepburn,
Uh-huh.
Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, she also has a lot of eighth house stuff, by the way, Angelina Jolie.
Oh yeah,
She has a moon in eighth house. Prince William.
Prince William, Marilyn Monroe.
She also has a moon eighth house.
Mm. Meryl Streep, Teal Swan. Do you know Teal
Oh,
Swan?
wow. Teal Swan. She's always giving a lot of information to people.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Teal Swan?
Well, I've seen the documentary that basically frames her as a cult leader.
I wonder what eighth house. Can you pull up her chart?
Yeah.
There it is. Let's look at it.
Yeah,
I'm
let's see.
sorry, I'm interested.
No,
I
this
got
I am too. Let's
intrigued.
look at it. This is very, Mercury and Gemini. We're going to dig into
Here
something
we are. Yes.
here. Teal Swan. So she has her moon in Aquarius. It makes sense. Creating your own
Ah, in the
world
eighth house.
in the
She's
eighth
an eighth
house.
house mooner. All right.
But then,
In
yeah, she has
Aquarius.
her Mercury is in Gemini, but it's under the beams in the 12th house. So
Okay.
maybe her judgment is not always on point. I don't
Well,
know.
she could be very paradoxical,
Yeah.
like most people, but yeah, I did some research on her and saw different things, and yeah,
Yeah.
her energy is an interesting energy.
And then
People
with
love her. They like people like really, she's become very popular.
and people are very drawn to her. They kind of live by her word. But she has her sun conjunct Venus. And when you see that conjunct Venus in Gemini, when you see that people are drawn to them, you can sometimes use your charm to get people into your
Yes,
bubble.
yes, exactly. And that all that 12th house topics that, kind of taboo kinds of things. And
Mhm.
yeah, very, very interesting.
But then she has that Cancer rising, so there's like a caretaker quality about her. At least that's how people um
But she can be tough. She
yeah.
can she can really interrogate people with that Mercury, Sun, Venus, 12th house.
Hmm. Well, and she also has her Saturn and Mars conjunct in Scorpio, and they're both retrograde.
Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah. Her Neptune like just entered Capricorn when she was born. So it's like
Hmm.
really fresh Neptune in the seventh house. Also, a very prominent Neptune like that, I would say is someone who might be prone to deception. I don't know.
Yeah, or drugs.
Or drugs. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, deception, drugs, or having difficult
Yes.
relationships constantly dissolving, or many relationships. I mean, she does that with her work. She's having many relationships with different people
Hmm.
coming in and out and dissolving, like maybe paradigms or ways of believing things with that Jupiter there next to it.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
That was so
yay.
fun. Yeah, thank you so much for being my guest and talking with me about the eighth house. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better.
You too. Do you do like readings over Zoom or you just do in person?
Yeah, I do. No, I do. I didn't really say much about my readings, but I do in-depth readings, medical astrology, and natal chart readings on Zoom. And also babies. I do stuff for families and stuff like that because I do craniosacral therapy. So sometimes people want to they give birth to their baby, and then I do a sun moon rising for their baby and a craniosacral session for them. So
Oh, I love it.
yeah,
Cool.
I love doing readings actually. And then eventually I'll start doing more workshops and retreats in the future.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.